this slide, I just want to mention that Deborah has a TED Talk. And if you go to YouTube, I can guarantee you, you will thoroughly enjoy this particular TED Talk. We wanted to make sure we highlighted it this morning. We really haven't highlighted her TED Talk in quite some time, but we want to make sure that everyone can follow up afterwards and take a little time out and view that TED Talk. Welcome, everyone. I see more folks coming. Welcome, welcome into the fold today. Make yourself comfortable, lean back in your chair, get yourself a beverage or refreshment, and just check and make sure that you're on mute so that all of our background noise is muted and we won't have a lot to interfere at the top of the hour. We're about 6 minutes away from our live webinar starting. And we just want to welcome everyone and tell you how grateful we are that you're here today. So glad to see so many folks coming on board. Oh my goodness, this is going to be a wonderful hour. Lots of good information. It too indeed will be an experience for one and all. And hopefully we'll be working hard to reach our goal that you see on the screen now of reaching 10,000 followers. Check in on our YouTube, our Facebook. We've got Twitter. We've got all kinds of social media outlets. And don't forget one of the most important ones, and that is just our website. Go to our website. It is so easy to navigate. I am not technically savvy, and I enjoy going to the Opus Peace website. I can find everything I need to look at informationally or to purchase a course on our masterpiece or any tools that we have, some of the films and videos we have, with no more than 2 clicks. We have a 2-click rule, by golly, and I really love that. So take a minute to go to our website. If you have questions, feel free to give our number a call and talk with our executive director, Angie Snyder. She is a wealth of information and can have some really informative conversations with you if there's something you need, want, or care to enroll in.
Don?
Welcome, everybody. It's an active time in our room now. I just ask that everyone take a quick check and make sure that you're on mute. We've got lots and lots and lots of folks coming on right now, and we want to make sure that our background noise is at a minimum before the top of the hour when the webinar starts. We'll be joined by our presenter and presenters, and we want to make sure that we can gain all of the knowledge and all of the information they have to offer. So once again, on behalf of the founders of Opus Peace, our board members, our ambassadors, and our Institute interns, we want to genuinely and warmly welcome you to our webinar, and then, of course, following that, our Global Anchor Your Heart event. Take a peek at this beautiful woman. Karen Keene is our most recent recipient of the Mead Team Award. She's the recipient for 2024, and she is, as you can see, a poster child for 5-star leadership, just let me say. Karen leads her organization in hospice with the leadership of no other, is all I can say. She also spreads the word of Opus Peace to everyone in hospice, as well as in her local communities, regional and national communities as well. Karen Keene is also an end-of-life doula. That's how I got to know her more, and I'm so very proud to call her a hospice colleague, an Opus Peace fellow ambassador, and now a friend. This is a slide that talks just a little bit about our monthly webinars. The next one is on March 25th. You can go and register right now. If you can't make the live webinar for some reason, because things come up in our lives, both personal and professional, by registering, if you can't make it live, you will get the recording, along with any of the tools that we provide that accompany that live webinar. So don't think that if you register and can't make it that you've lost out, because you really haven't. You'll get the recording and the tools, and you'll still benefit from the word that we enjoy spreading. And it's so important that we spread. Here's a slide on our masterpiece program. We actually have so many different masterpiece courses, and I think it's like the best kept secret we have right now. So we're not going to whisper about it. We're going to talk out loud about it today. Look at all of the wonderful things that we have. Any topic in there is going to appeal to somebody. More than likely, multiple topics will appeal to us. You can go right onto our website. You can go to our masterpiece landing page. And like I said, 1 or 2 clicks, and you can view all of our masterpiece courses, tools, films, and videos, and you can just as easily order. You must know that each one of our masterpiece courses offers the first lesson in each course for free. So if you've got a topic that you're interested in, you can click on that. You can look that first course or that first chapter over. Just go ahead and view it. Get a feel for what it is. If it's not what you're looking for, you can continue to browse and find a course that is. If it's something that's right up your alley, click on it, purchase it, and off you go. You get everything from a workbook to videos to Deborah Grassman herself sharing her knowledge and all of our information from Opus Peace with you. And I will tell you that the most wonderful thing about our masterpiece courses, beyond the topics, is the workbook. Download that workbook if you purchase one of these masterpieces and try that out. It will help guide you through the experience of our masterpiece course. I did want to, well, here we go. We are right at the top of the hour. I really did talk myself right on past the top of the hour. So with this, I know Angie's about to come on board, and she'll be welcoming you and making some announcements. So with pleasure, I'd like to welcome Angie Snyder, our executive director, and I see Deborah Grassman at her side. So ladies, it's all yours.
Hey, Ginger. So we're going to get started. Just a few housekeeping items before we get going. So first, as Ginger said, if you would keep yourself on mute, that will keep down the background noise so everyone can hear the presentation. Also, today's presentation does have continuing education credits available to both nurses and counselors. For nurses, it comes from the ANCC, and for counselors, it's through a partnership with WestCare. You will need to take an exam. You must attend the entire live presentation. You will get a link to take the exam. You must receive an 80% or better. You can retake it up to 2 times. And then we need you to complete an evaluation, and then we will send you the certificate. So it is worth 1.5 CEs, and that will come in a follow-up email within the next week. Also, just a few other things. If you missed it from Ginger, we do have a free webinar or chat that we do every single month. This is the one for February. Normally, it is on the last Thursday of the month at 12 noon. The next one will be March 25th. And so you can feel free to join us for that. It is free and open to the public. We do send out an email the week before with the link and all the information. You can share it with others. This is something that Opus Peace does as a public service to all of you. If anyone is interested, we are funded by some donations, and those donations ensure that we can keep doing webinars every month and also public service events like the one we're doing today. Also, you heard Ginger mention the Soul Injury Institute. We do have our 4-day virtual leadership training. The next one will take place April 28th to May 1st. It is all virtual for 4 days, and we will give you more information at the end of the presentation on that. And then Deborah has just finished her 3rd book. It is due to be released on March 1st. We are currently doing pre-sale orders for that. When I send the follow-up email, I will also give you the information for being able to get a pre-sale order. After March 1st, it'll be available for regular order on our website. Also, she has 2 other books, Peace at Last and The Hero Within, if you're interested. You can also use the QR code that's on your screen. So I want to welcome everyone. I am Angie Snyder, and I'm the Executive Director of Opus Peace, and I've been a hospice nurse for more than 25 years. So I want to welcome you to today's webinar and then our global event, and thank you for carving time out of your day to invest in yourself. Our webinar today is going to focus on the soul injury self-awareness inventory tool. Now, today is a significant day for several reasons. One, it's Groundhog's Day, and you'll hear more about that later. And if you look up on the national calendar, you'll find out it's Heavenly Hash Day, World Wetlands Day, Brown Dog Day, and more. And finally, today marks the official midway point between winter and spring. And the connection to this unique time of year ties directly to why I hope you are here today and the tool that we're going to be talking about in this webinar. Now, this moment in the seasons represents a powerful transition. Even as we continue to feel winter's chill, there's an undeniable sense of hope and anticipation for warmth and renewal of spring. It's a time of in-between, a space where both endings and new beginnings coexist. At Opus Peace, we might describe this as a place where pain and peace can coexist. And like this seasonal shift, soul injuries are often carried in the quiet spaces of our hearts. Some linger just below the surface, and others are buried in the unconscious. And just as nature prepares for renewal, we have the opportunity today to learn about a tool that can help us to cultivate honesty, courage, and humility as we turn inward to examine our own self. Now, we will explore how self-awareness can illuminate hidden wounds and lead us to a journey to heal the relationship we have with ourselves. As we begin the webinar, followed by the Global Anchoring Heart event, my hope for each of you is that you will use the next hour and 15 minutes to turn away from the outside world and simply focus on you. Now, I'd like to introduce Deborah Grassman. She's a hospice nurse practitioner who has cared for more than 10,000 dying veterans over her 30-year career at the VA. Deborah has written 3 books, Peace at Last, The Hero Within, and her soon-to-be-released Soul Injury book. She's published more than 25 articles. She has 4 documentary films and a TED Talk featuring her work. And as the founder of Opus Peace, we are so fortunate for the experience and knowledge that she brings to us today. Deborah?
Well, thank you, Angie, and I thank all of you for joining us today for this annual Anchor Your Heart event. We are so excited to be here with you. We're going to talk about soul injury and healing the relationship that you have with yourself. And we think this topic is important because we live in a hurting world. And when you peel back the layers of that hurt, you find loss, shame, guilt, helplessness, and loss of control. And those are barriers that can cause us to acquire a soul injury. So let's talk about that. And I want to start by asking you a few questions. Have there been times in your life when you felt lost, sort of forgot who you were, felt like you didn't belong, became disconnected from your own sense of self? You know, at one time or another, most of us have experienced that kind of self-alienation. It's called a soul injury. Let's listen to this short video clip of 4 people describing their soul injury.
As I was experiencing Vietnam and working in the OR and being a medic, I realized after the fact that I was constantly filling myself with pain and sorrow. And I feel as though part of the reason why my soul left me is because there wasn't any room. I was full of sorrow. I had a soul injury.
So I remember when I was 7 years old thinking that I wish that I could have saved my grandparents from their horrible death so that my parents would not be in such pain. Of course, this was an irrational guilt because I wasn't even born when my grandparents were killed. And yet I felt this helplessness with respect to my parents' pain and the generational soul injury that incurred in my family was passed on from one generation to another onto me, and hopefully not onto the next generation.
I attended a pretty well-known Christian university, and one of the fundraisers was to have people, this particular club, social club, painted themselves black, charcoal, and had a slave auction in front of the cafeteria. And just the nauseating feeling that came from that in 1968, I know the civil rights movement was still in its throes, but that in a Christian community that was tolerated. And throughout my career since that time, what could have been so debilitating and self-destructive, even though I felt the trauma, it has given me a new approach to helping people who have been wounded or who have suffered soul injury through racism, marginalization, bigotry, and prejudice.
So I want to tell you about soul injury from the perspective of being a nurse for 38 years. The language, the principles of soul injury actually named for me something that I've been aware of for many years, and that's this incredible burden or sense of perfectionism.
Well, you can see that there are lots of different ways to acquire a soul injury. And if you look underneath any of these hurts, you'll discover loss of self-worth. And isn't it crazy that a wound that is so prevalent doesn't have a name? And you know, without a name for it, we can't identify it or do anything about it. Well, today, we're going to not only name it, we're going to talk about what to do about it so that we can restore inner wholeness and personal peace. Not only that, but if you are a professional, and I know many of you probably are, the soul injury concept can be a game changer for your practice, allowing meaningful dialogue with your clients. Well, let's start with the definition of soul injury. Soul injury is a wound that separates you from your real self. And now that real self is not some idealized, perfect place where there are no flaws or failures. No, your real self includes the totality of who you are, the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful. But the totality of your real self often gets divided into scattered pieces. And wholeness requires getting real with all the pieces of self, not just the pieces that we like. Now, there's also a piece of self inside each of us that is not afraid of who we are and who we are not. And that's our brave self. The brave self is able and willing to hold all your scattered pieces of self for you until you're able to do it consciously. Now, when you lose your sense of self, you might describe yourself as feeling empty or defective or not good enough or smart enough or good looking enough. In other words, you are MIA, missing in action in your own life. Some people describe it as living a counterfeit life or feeling like an imposter in their own life. Let me give you a personal example. I remember a time in my life when I was feeling overwhelmed and depressed with the many changes that had been forced upon me. It felt like someone had opened the drain and all my passion was seeping out and there was nothing I could do to stop it. One morning I was brushing my teeth and looking in the mirror. Only this time I looked beyond the eyes that were peering back at me. I was looking for my soul. And what greeted me was nothing. emptiness. And I said out loud that day, Deborah, I don't know where you are, but I'm promising you right now that I won't stop until I find you. I didn't have a name for what I was experiencing at that time in my life, but now I do. Soul injury. Well, what does a soul injury look like? Yeah, the face of soul injury looks like you and me. Now, why do we use this word soul to describe this injury? Well, it's because one of the definitions in the dictionary captures the meaning. Listen to this. The dictionary says that soul is your total self that includes the immaterial, animating essence of an individual. Isn't that a wonderful definition of soul? In other words, soul is the source of your vitality that provides you with the essence of who you really are, your total self. And your total self includes all those scattered pieces of self. And each scattered piece has energy. Each scattered piece matters. Each scattered piece contributes to your total self. Let me tell you what happens when you mistake one scattered piece as your only self, your only piece. I saw a woman in the store wearing a t-shirt that said this: I'm a bitch. That's who I am. If you don't like it, stay away. Now, what her t-shirt could have said is this: I'm a hurting person who is angry and afraid of the world. Something has happened to her that made her feel vulnerable. And she protects herself against vulnerability with anger so she doesn't have to feel that hurt. And if that hurt gets buried alive, then the real self that's holding that hurt for her gets buried with it.
So you can see that soul injuries often surround the fear of emotional pain, fear of not being good enough or smart enough or good looking enough, just not enoughness. Feeling less than is often how a soul injury is acquired. And as a result, we can't be fully present to ourselves. Later, we're going to give you a tool to help you become fully present to yourself. Being fully present is sometimes misinterpreted to mean we are always supposed to be without fear and full of love and positive energy all the time. No, it's about becoming real, becoming fully present to whatever is here in our hearts. Now, I don't know if you're like me, but I always thought that being fully present meant that I had to show up 100% of myself. Now I realize I can't always be 100%. I just have to be willing to consciously show up 100% to the 60% of me that is here right now. That's what it means to be real. I also realize that it's a lot harder to fool myself with denial and pretenses. It also reminds me that that 40% of me needs some conscious attention. So let's look at how a soul injury compares with some other issues, because sometimes people confuse soul injury with PTSD or with moral injury. Let me give you an example. Linda Trageser is one of our Opus Peace ambassadors. Linda was 3 years old and playing on the swings as her mother was mowing the yard. As the lawnmower came near, Linda fell out of the swing and the lawnmower ran over her hand, severing 4 fingers. Linda was rushed to the hospital, but her fingers were unable to be restored. Now, I think we can all agree that that was traumatic. Now, did Linda develop PTSD? Linda says that she did not. Was there a moral injury, which is a violation of a deeply held value and belief? No. Was there a soul injury? Linda would tell you yes. So here's how Linda describes what happened as she learned how to live with a severely disabled hand. She says, "When I tell the story about how I lost my fingers, adults gasp in astonishment. I quickly assure them that I am fine. I flex my hand, wiggle the stumps of my fingers to prove to them that all is well with me. The next comment that almost everyone makes is how horrible that was for my mother. I readily agree and tell them that before the doctor could attend to my hand, he had to attend to my traumatized mother by giving her a shot to calm her down. I tell them how traumatizing it was for my mother to go into the yard where the accident occurred because my fingers had never been found and she was afraid she would see them. What I failed to realize is the impact of my mother's trauma on me. You see, I felt responsible for traumatizing my mother. This had major effects on my entire life. First of all, I felt tremendous guilt for traumatizing her. It was my fault that she became so hysterical. At my young age, I had no way of knowing that I had been helpless to control what had happened. Secondly, to assuage my irrational guilt, I had an intense desire to prove to everybody that I was okay and that I could do anything anyone else could do. I even learned how to type and how to play piano to show people that no one needed to feel sorry for me because I was not handicapped. Therefore, my mother didn't need to feel guilty for what had happened. Now, Linda told us that her stoic attitude led to pervasive codependent behaviors in which she took on the role of caretaker for her family, friends, coworkers, and even strangers if she could. And then she said this: my people-pleasing behaviors became deadly to my soul. I was so busy taking care of everyone else that I arrived at a point where I had no me left. So you can see that soul injury is different than PTSD or moral failures.
Well, what causes soul injuries? Soul injuries are caused by unmourned loss and hurt, unforgiven guilt and shame, and fear of helplessness and loss of control. Yet we're not taught how to lose, how to mourn, how to forgive, or how to let go of control and accept our limitations. I mean, have you ever taken a class on how to be a loser or a failure? Yet losing and failing are a part of life. But our educational systems and advertisements in the media value achievement, success. They teach us how to hold on to, how to control. So we're taught to numb out feelings of hurt, guilt, shame, and helplessness. Well, let's briefly look at these three causes, starting with unmourned loss and hurt. You know, there's a famous saying that goes like this: those who grieve well, heal well. I've also heard it said, those who grieve well, live well. Well, why is that true? Because then grief doesn't have to be stored in our body. You know, grief is the natural, normal expression of loss, hurt, disappointment, and failure. And mourning releases the grief. Now, there's another famous saying that says, you can't heal what you don't feel. In other words, when you let yourself feel your feelings instead of stuffing them behind a stoic wall, then rather than your head and your heart being in conflict with each other, they can be in one accord. So grief is creative. Grieving helps us let go of what was and open up to what is. So grieving is not a destructive process. It is unmourned grief that is destructive.
So the job at hand is that we need to learn how to develop a different relationship with the part of ourselves carrying our pain. Because when pain shows up, most of us don't say, welcome, oh, I'm so glad to see you. No, what we say is, go away. I don't like you. I'm afraid of you. And then we numb out that part of ourselves. So instead, we want to say to ourselves, tell me how you are hurting. I will listen. Isn't that what you want from others? The question is, do you know how to do that with yourself? Or do you use numbing agents to not feel your hurt? Numbing agents keep you from being real with yourself. After her husband died, Pat McGuire, one of the Opus Peace founders, said that her instinct was to shut down and numb out. But then she remembered that she didn't want to betray herself, and instead, she wanted to be real. She said, "As painful as it was, opening my heart to feeling what was there was so much better than trying to numb out what was real." So what numbing agents do you use? We all use them. On your screen, these are some numbing agents that we use to camouflage our pain. And there are times when we need to camouflage it in untrustworthy environments. The problem is when we wear our camo with ourselves. What's important is that you know what numbing agents you use so that you bring awareness to the ways that you are keeping yourself unconscious. Now, as a hospice nurse, I can tell you that regrets often surface as people die. They look back over their life with a broader perspective, and they see things that they could have done differently. And on their deathbeds, what do these issues usually surround? It's the misuse of numbing agents. They see how their numbing agents separated them from the people they loved and even separated them from their own sense of self. We end up selling our souls, so to speak. So it's important for you to know what your favorite numbing agents are so that you can use them so that the numbing agents that you use to escape or deny painful experiences instead of staying sober. Now, do you know what the word sober stands for? Son of a bitch, everything is real. No more pretending, no more numbing agents, willing to be real. I saw a woman wearing a t-shirt that said, "I survive on chaos, coffee, and cussing." In other words, she survives on numbing agents, and those numbing agents might be squeezing out her real self. Instead of surviving on numbing agents, what could she do? Well, the first thing to do is to anchor your heart so that you can get real with whatever you are feeling. And we are going to teach you how to do that at 3 o'clock. And after you anchor your heart, we suggest to do this. Speak the pain in your soul. Draw your pain. Dance your pain. Sing your pain. Cry your pain. Dream your pain. Scream your pain. Exercise your pain. Write your pain a letter. Have your pain write you a letter.
Well, what about the second cause of soul injury? Guilt and shame. What's the difference between them? Well, guilt tells us that something we did was wrong. Shame, on the other hand, tells us that we are wrong. We are defective. We are unworthy. We don't matter. Those are two very different things, aren't they? Well, let's look at shame. It's one of the quickest ways to acquire a soul injury. Now, one of the most well-known researchers on the topic of shame is Dr. Brené Brown, and her extensive research on shame has provided this definition: the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Now, Dr. Brown's research showed 3 things about shame. We all have it. It's universal. Secondly, Dr. Brown says that we're all afraid to talk about shame. And what's more, the less we talk about shame, the more control it has over us. Now, many people think we should never let shame sit at our table, so to speak. Some counselors are even trained to not let shame sit at the table if a client brings it up. But researchers and psychologists would tell us differently. In other words, we need to prepare the table for shame's inclusion. Why? Because we all have a shamer in our head. Better to bring him or her out in the open. Well, that means that we have to become curious about the part of ourselves holding that shame. We have to abide shame's presence and change our relationship with the part of ourselves that is holding it. As Dr. Vanderkolk, one of the leading trauma experts, puts it, he says, All parts of self are welcome. We don't say to people, don't be ashamed. We say, there, let's express shame. Let's feel shame. Let's see what this shame stuff is all about. Now, you know, it's not always easy to explore shame, is it? It's kind of like entering a dark cave. But you know what Joseph Campbell says about caves? He says, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. Shame is a cave that makes you fear your own self. That's why you want to bring that shamer that's in your head out into the open. Paradoxically, you'll discover that the treasure is you.
So what about helplessness? Almost anything feels better than that aching feeling. And fear of feeling helpless in uncontrollable situations sometimes leaves us scrambling to try to control things that are beyond our control. Here's what one woman expressed about that fear in a letter to her mother. She thought the letter was about forgiveness, but she discovered it was actually about childhood helplessness. I forgive you for what you thought and said about me and the disgust you showed when you said it. I forgive myself for living out the label. I forgive you for crawling into a bottle. I forgive myself for running away as soon as I could. I forgive you for drinking yourself to death. I forgive myself for leaving Dad to deal with it all. I forgive myself for having no guilt. Sandy said that this letter liberated the irrational guilt from the sense of responsibility that she had to take care of her mother. And for the first time, she let herself feel the helplessness she had felt as a young child and teen, which she said liberated her from the irrational guilt that she had been carrying around. Surprisingly, just recognizing, naming, feeling, and talking about helplessness goes a long way to letting it go. However, the secret to truly releasing its distress is learning how to let be. Let be is not just a passive leaving it alone. You have to actively bring awareness to the situation so that you can consciously release the fear surrounding it. The emphasis on be invites a fearless investment of hopeful energy. Now, I've heard some people describe this as let go and let God. I might describe it as let go and let be. However you might describe it, letting be requires connecting with your brave self so that you not only stop trying to control what can't be controlled, you send the uncontrollable on its way with your blessing of hope and grace.
Well, what if we already have everything we need in order to be whole, and that it's a matter of clearing the barriers, the log jams that keep us from accessing that wholeness? Because if we truly realize the log jams that loss, hurt, guilt, shame, and helplessness cause, then we'd stop using numbing agents to try to not feel uncomfortable feelings. Because when those log jams are removed and you connect with all the scattered pieces of your real self, then you stop numbing the pain and instead let yourself feel it. You stop being afraid of your pain. You tell your ego to stop covering your pain up with anger, fear, and shame. You talk to that part of yourself carrying the pain. You comfort that part of yourself, and not with numbing agents either. And you tell a trusted other person about your pain. So what does all of this have to do with soul injury, and why is this term so important? Because most of us have soul injuries, and most soul injuries are insidious.
Now, there are 3 definitions of insidious in the dictionary. The first is developing so gradually as to be well established before becoming apparent. The second definition is harmful, but enticing. The third definition is awaiting a chance to entrap. Now, this is why I think the insidious nature of soul injury is so important. Insidious soul injuries are ignored because they pale in comparison to trauma. Whether acquired suddenly after a traumatic event or gradually after a less obvious event, you can end up at the same lifeless, soulless place. So let's go back to Linda's story and see what she says about insidious injury. The first time I heard the words insidious soul injury, they touched me in a place deep inside that I can't quite explain. I had never before heard the term, and yet I knew it. I had lived it. It was easy for anyone listening to my story to quickly understand the trauma I had experienced. But no one, not even myself, recognized the insidious nature of the soul injury that occurred each day that I strived to be the responsible one, strived to be the one who made everyone's life easier. It was the insidious nature of my soul injury that had made it so deadly. It is only now, after learning about soul injury, that I realize how cut off I have been from my own inner sense of self. That little girl was not hurt by the trauma to her hand. She was hurt by assuming responsibility for everyone else's feelings. She was hurt by always putting on a brave front. Now I look back at all the significant decisions that I made that were based on making others happy, even though I knew they were creating lifeless, empty holes scattered somewhere inside my body. I didn't question it because it seemed normal to me. It's all I knew. It was only when I took the soul injury inventory that I realized that even though all those scattered pieces of self were unconscious, they still contain parts of the real me, parts waiting for me to discover.
So imagine how different Linda's life might have been if someone would have identified the potential for a soul injury when she was a child and had helped her deal with the subsequent issues of loss, guilt, shame, and helplessness so that it did not corrode her sense of self. You know, Thich Nhat Hanh says it best. He says it like this: when the baby is crying, the mother picks up the baby and she holds the baby tenderly in her arms. Your pain, your anxiety is your baby. You have to take care of it. You have to go back to yourself, recognize the suffering in you, embrace the suffering, and you will get a relief. The soul injury inventory helped Linda get the kind of relief that Thich Nhat Hanh is talking about. So let's look at that self-awareness inventory tool right now. On that tool, we're going to take it in a minute. There are 10 questions, and we're going to use a poll to do that. That's going to come up on your screen. Each question will come up on your screen, and you're going to answer it with either always true, often true, sometimes true, or never true. We also want you to write the number down on a piece of paper because you'll add them up at the end so that you can get a total score. Now, I also want you to know that this poll is completely anonymous. The polling company doesn't tell us how anyone answers a question. It will only give us a collective score that will show up on your screen at the end of each question. So here's the first question in a poll for you to answer. Hold on just a minute, we're setting it up here. All right, here's your first question. I am not able to be my real self. So would you say in general that is always true, often true, sometimes true, or never true? In general, most of the time, how would you answer that? Okay. Question number 2. I engage in some activities to help me avoid uncomfortable feelings. Always, often, sometimes, or never true. How would you answer that particular one? And don't compare yourself with anybody else. This is about you. This is private. I engage in some activities to help me avoid uncomfortable feelings. All right. How would you answer this one? When I avoid uncomfortable feelings, it often causes problems with people in my life. Avoiding uncomfortable feelings causes problems with people in my life. I have a hard time facing feelings of helplessness, loss of control, and change. Helplessness, loss of control, and change. How do you do with that? Guilt and/or shame haunt me. Feel defective, inadequate, or unworthy. Self-compassion and connection with my real self are difficult for me. I struggle to find meaning in my life. So in general, yes or no, have you identified a possible soul injury for yourself? And lastly, do you think a past soul injury is affecting your life now? Yes or no? Or not sure? Now add up those numbers that you wrote beside each of the first 8 questions, the 1, 2, 3, or 4, add them up for a total.
So you can see from this slide that the lower the score, the more likely there is to be issues of loss, hurt, grief, guilt, and shame. Now, one person took the inventory and later said this to us: I realize now that my soul is in a state of starvation because it's been malnourished with the wrong diet. Do you see how this inventory can open up a profoundly meaningful self-dialogue and also be used with others to explore and connect with their real self? Let me tell you how another person used this inventory. First, she took it herself, and then she got another copy and gave it to her adult daughter. And this is what she said: I'd like you to take this inventory, and afterward, let's talk about how my alcoholism caused a soul injury in you when you were a child. Now, this woman told us that her relationship with her daughter has totally changed since that day. This inventory, this tool, opens doors. It opens doors in a non-threatening way that facilitates meaningful conversations that can restore wholeness. So tell your clients, your friends, and family to go to our website anytime to take the inventory. Soul injury has been researched by 3 doctors at Wright State University and the University of South Florida. They have validated the inventory in 2 separate studies involving 400 healthcare professionals and caregivers. Their article has been published in the Journal of Hospice and Palliative Nursing and also in the Johns Hopkins textbook for caring for veterans. And their conclusions were that the data supports the phenomena of soul injury. And the inventory is an excellent invariant measure of soul injury.
So you can see that soul injury focuses on healing the relationship that you have with yourself. And you know, the famous poet, Derek Walcott, says it better than I can. This is what he says: the time will come when with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat, and you will love again the stranger who was yourself. And personally, I would add, especially if you can love the stranger that is inside you, holding your emotional pain for you right now. You know, being fully present to yourself is the goal. And the soul injury inventory is designed to help us identify and release impediments keeping us from being real. So before we take questions, I want to show you a 4-minute slideshow about becoming real. It offers us some important clues for why you'll want to learn about a simple tool called Anchor Your Heart that will help you be real with yourself. It'll start here in a second.
Last night I saw that movie, the one about the wooden boy. The good news is he could feel no sadness. The bad news is he could feel no joy. And it hit me hard, a puppet on a shelf. So when he wished on a far-off star, you know, I made that same wish for myself. I want to be real, real. Drop the act, take off the mask and feel real. Well, I've been going through the motions, pulled by invisible strings, and I've pushed down the hurt, and I've held back the tears, and covered up the dreams. But beneath it all, trying hard to breathe, the me wanna be real, real. Drop the act, take off the mask, and feel real. I wanna be real. Let the fear go, let the heart show, let the world see me. I wanna be real. Oh, and goodbye, wooden heart, and goodbye, painted smile. I wanna dance in a crowd, I wanna laugh out loud, I wanna act like a fool, I wanna be uncool, I wanna cry when I hurt, I wanna sweat when I work, I want help when I fall, I wanna feel it all. I wanna be real. Take off the mask, be real. Let my heart show real. I wanna be real.
Now you know the secret. Now you know what 10,000 dying veterans taught 5 VA hospice nurses about acquiring personal peace. We have a few minutes for some questions before our 3 o'clock event starts. So I would just ask if anyone has questions. Ginger, you can let me know if there's any in the chat, but if you have a question, you can come off mute.
Well, Angie, there aren't any questions in the chat right now. However, some folks are experiencing issues with hearing us and not hearing us. So I just kind of wanted to let everybody know that they might want to check their own system and maybe go out and back in so that we can let them back in. It's probably something on their end.
Thank you, Ginger.
My pleasure.
And I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Robert.
So I heard what I thought was a distinction between the original injury, insult event and the moral injury. I wonder if you could say more about the connection, but particularly the way they might be somewhat independent of one another, become independent perhaps.
Yeah, thank you, Robert, for bringing that up, because they are independent. So if you think about the way moral injury is defined by the VA, by the Department of Defense, it's anytime there is a violation of belief or morals. When you have those kinds of violations, that's a moral injury. Now, that may or may not cause you to become separated from your own sense of self. If it does cause you to become separated from your sense of self and you lose kind of your grounding and what have you for a prolonged period of time, I'm not saying just for a day or two, but if it does, then you would have both a moral injury and a soul injury. Same thing with PTSD. You know, you can have trauma, and if that trauma, goes on, we well know how trauma works now in the brain, and in about a third of people, trauma will cause PTSD. PTSD also can cause you to lose your sense of self, to corrode that sense of self, but it doesn't with all people. There are plenty of people that have PTSD that do not have a soul injury. In fact, Marie, one of our founders, she's a Vietnam veteran. She has PTSD from Vietnam. And she will say she does not have soul injury because she grew up in such a loving family that gave her such a strong sense of self that not even Vietnam could corrode her sense of self. So all three of those are really independent. and they have different approaches to treating, because one, the moral injury has to do with your beliefs and your morals and values. PTSD is more about the brain and your and trauma to the brain, and your brain, that amygdala, reacting to it in an ongoing way. And then if either of those cause you to lose your sense of self, to lose your sense of being, then that is what would be identified as a soul injury. And what you do to approach, all three of those do have some overlaps as far as what you do to treat them and to relieve the distress of them. And yet, in fundamental ways, they are different. So you have to kind of assess if someone has one, two, or all three. We actually have a chart on our website that really distinguishes. It takes one of our ambassadors, John Drinkard, in his experience. He's a Vietnam veteran with PTSD, also suffered moral injury, and also suffered a soul injury from childhood that overshadowed really his Vietnam experience. So you can go on there and it actually lays out a chart that gives you all three distinctions and how to approach them differently. Does that sort of answer your question, Robert?
That was very helpful.
Good. You're making me rethink this presentation, because I had a slide in there that outlined that really clearly, and I ended up taking it out at the last minute. So you reminded me that maybe I should put it back in.
And Ginger, I know a few questions came in the chat. If you could just give those to us.
Certainly, yes. There's one that says, Terry asks, what do you recommend for helping to identify the source of soul injury when it is felt but not remembered or recognized?
Oh, wow. Great question. Well, the one thing, there's a couple, we have a lot of other tools, and we have tools that help to uncover some of that. One of the things that we have is a loss chart, and we have a loss chart with different contexts, just kind of in general losses. And I mean, how many losses do we have on there? Probably 70 or something. Yeah, possible ones. We have one for sexual violence, because those losses, some are the same in general, but some are very different. And then we have one on aging, just the losses you experience with aging. So we have different contexts, we have different charts with different content on it. And you go through, and I mean, we've led hundreds of people in our workshops. We do workshops where people actually go through and they'll think, oh yeah, I've had a few losses in my life. And then they go through and they just see all the losses. And then we ask them, we have exercises that we do where they go back to identify what of those losses have you mourned and released? What have you not mourned? What have you not released? And so then they identify that. And then the third step, obviously, is to go ahead and release them. And some of that happens with Anchoring Heart, which we're going to be doing obviously in just 10 minutes or so, 3 minutes actually.
Well, one of the other questions.
Yeah, we have time for one more question.
Okay, perfect, because we've got one more sitting out here. Could you tell us again what the acronym for SOBER stands for? Andrea.
Yes, the acronym was son of a bitch, everything's real.
So we use that word sober often in context of drugs and alcohol, but it's any numbing agent, shopping, interneting, overworking, being a perfectionist, any numbing agent, you can think about it. When you let go of it, then you will start living your life in a sober way.
All right, can you screen share? So I wonder if we could close this segment by summarizing what we've learned about soul injury today in 3 simple statements. Cultivate in me the willingness to re-own, rehome, and revitalize scattered pieces of myself so wholeness can be restored. Grow in me the honesty, courage, and humility to release my fear of who I am and who I am not. Fuel me with your grace. So we are going to start preparing now for our global Anchoring Heart event. And some of you may just now be joining us, and we welcome you here with us. Again, my name is Angie Snyder, and I'm the Executive Director of Opus Peace. I'm here with Deborah Grassman, one of the founders of Opus Peace. Now, you may be wondering why we scheduled this event for February 2nd, especially since this year it's on a Sunday. Well, the reason is today is Groundhog Day. Now, Groundhog Day is an American and Canadian tradition that derives from a notion that if a groundhog emerges from its burrow on February 2nd and sees its shadow, it will retreat into its den and winter will go on for 6 more weeks. You may also be familiar with the movie Groundhog Day, in which Bill Murray, a self-centered weatherman, keeps reliving the same day, February 2nd, over and over again until he gets the lesson of opening up to his shadow instead of hiding it. It was the famous psychiatrist Carl Jung who coined this idea of the shadow self. We all have a shadow self. The shadow self is filled with disowned parts of ourselves, parts we don't like, parts we don't want to look at. The result is that these parts of self get buried alive in the unconscious. Now, here's the tricky part. Because our shadow is unconscious, we don't even know what we've hidden in there. Some people hide their dark side. Some people hide their light. People who hide their light and their shadow, well, the reality is we all have both. Whether we like it or not, we all have shades of light and dark in our shadow. And both light and dark go with us wherever we go. And if we want to be real, we have to open up to the full spectrum of who we are.
Now, becoming real with ourselves involves learning how to let pain and peace sit side by side together without fear. Now, your ego doesn't have the capacity to hold emotional pain. Your soul does. However, the ego has to choose to let go of the fear so the soul can consciously hold the pain for you. Some people say that it's like the lion and the lamb learning how to sit down together. Now, you may be familiar with Bessel van der Kolk's work with grounding tools that help you retrain your brain to allow emotional pain and peace to be together side by side without fear. Now, this research is what we at Opus Peace use to base our work on. And the grounding tool that we use is called Anchor Your Heart. Now, in a few minutes, we're going to lead you in how to anchor your heart. It's an act of self-compassion that helps you become fully present to yourself. Now, if you're a caregiver, then you may already know how to be fully present for people that you care for. But do you know how to be fully present to your own self? For decades, I didn't know how. And if you would have told me that anchoring my heart would help me learn and it would be dying veterans who would teach me, I wouldn't have believed it. You know, as a hospice nurse, my goal was to help people to die healed, to die at peace with their past, at peace with what they were going through now, and at peace with what was coming. And this twilight time between life and death is fraught with feelings of helplessness, loss of control, and uncertainty. And I noticed that as I talked with patients about the difficulties that they were facing, they often became tearful and they placed their hand over their heart. It was a natural gesture and they used it intuitively. It was as if unconsciously their body had a natural wisdom that strengthened them. Sometimes I could literally see their fear of emotional pain dissipate as they let themselves feel the reality of what was happening. Now, it took more years of witnessing this to realize how this gesture could be used consciously to connect their head with their heart so they could be in one accord with their sense of self. We started calling it Anchor Your Heart, and we taught it not only to our dying patients, but also to their families. And now we're going to teach it to you. Now, this is not some gimmick that promises to magically take your troubles away. The magic's not in the tool, the anchoring the heart. The magic is inside you. So let me give you an idea about how the Anchor Your Heart tool can be used as I show you a 3-minute video of a young Opus Peace subscriber describing how she used the Anchor Your Heart tool after she was in a serious car accident.
So back in May, I was in a wreck. My ankle was shattered, my leg was shattered, and I got sent from the hospital with no pain control. And I screamed for hours on end. I couldn't breathe. I felt alone and I was numb. This hole had sunk so deep in my heart of nobody's gonna understand. Nobody can help me. I'm just alone. I'm defeated and I have to face this all by myself. And I screamed for hours on end with no pain control and everything felt hopeless. And I looked over and my mom is sobbing because she feels helpless. She can't help. She don't know what to do. She's falling apart. So she calls my grandma, which is her mom, and is falling apart in my grandma's arms. And they put my grandma on the phone and she starts talking to me about anchoring your heart. And to be honest, in a way I didn't understand, but when she got to my house at 2 in the morning because she drove through the night and she laid her hand locked in with mine on my heart and she sat with me and she kept talking and walking me through anchoring my heart. Even though the pain didn't stop, the emotional and the mental aspect of anchoring heart allowed me to not feel so alone. That big hole in my heart wasn't so big. I was able to feel like I could breathe again and not feel so suffocated. And in the moment where I felt so alone, it wasn't as bad because she was there and my heart was anchored.
So now that you realize the power of people learning to connect with all the scattered pieces of themselves, maybe you can understand why Opus Peace has been dreaming of this day when people all over the globe could join together for 3 minutes to clear our minds of clutter, to open our heart, to feel whatever is there, and then pause to connect with our real selves. Because therein lies inner peace. In fact, our Opus Peace tagline is "Peace begins in me." Yet inner peace can seem like a daunting challenge because chaos, hostility, and disappointment abound everywhere around us. And it is tempting to point the finger outward and blame others for causing it. We're not here today to do that. Instead, we are going to take 3.5 minutes to focus on getting real with the pain we might feel and making peace with it. Realizing that we are all simultaneously whole and wounded. Getting real means connecting with our own inner goodness and beauty. It means getting real with our inner and outer selves so they are in one accord with each other.
So before we anchor our hearts, I want you to just sense the intention of the other people. We had almost 400 people register for this event today. I want you just to sense the intention of all the people around the world who, like you, recognize the value of collective stillness. You know, it's a rare and precious commodity in today's rushed society, isn't it? So take a moment to just sense this community that's gathered here, this common unity, sensing that collective energy before we anchor our hearts. Now I want you to let yourself simply recede now within yourself for the next 3.5 minutes. And to do that, simply lower your eyes or close them completely, whichever you prefer, and place one or both hands, whichever feels most comfortable, but place them firmly and tenderly over your heart, applying enough pressure that you can feel the sensation. And now, take 3 deep breaths. Breathing deeply. Now release the breath. Let yourself breathe however your body wants to breathe. Release your attention from the breath. And now focus on getting real with yourself. To sincerely feel whatever you are feeling or trying not to feel right now. Just notice what's going on in your heart, not in your head. Giving permission for your heart to open to whatever is there. Feeling whatever you feel, not what it's supposed to feel, but what it's really feeling. Becoming fully present to yourself. Now close the door of your heart just a bit. You don't need to keep it open all the time. It's enough to simply bear witness to know what's there right now. Now let yourself linger here for a moment. Linger in this brave place inside you that is not afraid of your emotional pain and is also not afraid of your goodness and beauty. Let yourself become curious about connecting with your total self, with your human beingness, your soul. And now, as we prepare to join back together in a moment, be once again aware of the energy of all the people, that collective stillness that's gathered here together at this event. And take a deep breath and just let yourself resonate with this reservoir of quietude among us. Breathing that energy into yourself. And as you prepare to move on with your day, bring with you this sense of how to let pain, peace, sit side by side together without fear. And also to embrace joy and beauty wherever you find it, especially when you find it within yourself. So kind of stay in this space for a moment longer as I read to you a poem about beauty by Khalil Gibran. Beauty is a heart inflamed and a soul enchanted. It is not the image you would see or a song you would hear, but rather an image you see through your eyes closed and a song you hear through your shut ears. It's not the sap within the furrowed bark, nor a wing attached to a claw, but rather a garden forever in bloom and a flock of angels forever in flight. Beauty is life when life unveils her holy face. But you are life, and you are the veil. Beauty is eternity gazing at itself in a mirror. But you are eternity, and you are the mirror. You become more aware of the sensations of your body as you slowly open your eyes if you close them. Angie is going to tell you now a few practical things about anchoring your heart before we depart from each other and go about our day.
You'll want to anchor your heart periodically throughout the day to simply check in with yourself, keeping it real. Practice will increase the effectiveness. The hard part is simply remembering to do it when you get anxious, hurt, or overwhelmed. Also, use it to enhance your feelings of goodness and beauty. I encourage you to persist so that you can bring more you into your life. I also want to emphasize the importance of step 3 because too often people ignore or forget to do it. This third step is how you consciously create space for grace. One of our participants put it very eloquently. She said, I have used anchoring your heart many times. I place my hand on my heart and breathe when I'm distressed. But what makes it so powerful now is step 3, considering the place inside me that is strong enough to hold whatever it is that I fear. Wow. So remember, it's not enough to ventilate feelings. It's about befriending the part of self holding those feelings so that you can be fully conscious, fully awake to yourself. I'm going to give you just a few logistics and some announcements. So first, you're going to receive the Anchor Your Heart card. And that will come, I'll be sending an email out and it will come within the next week. And that email is going to contain several things for you to use after this webinar. So you will get the links for anyone who needs the continuing education credits. There'll be links for the test and the evaluations, and these must be completed no later than February 24th. There'll also be a general evaluation for today's webinar. I do ask that everybody fill that out. We do take that feedback seriously and we use it to make improvements in our program. You will get the card that you see on your screen in a downloadable format. So you can download the Anchor Your Heart card to keep. You can also print some extras and hand them out to other people. We will be sending you the link for the 11-minute Anchor Your Heart video that you can use for yourself and to share with others. We will also be sending discussion guides to use when watching the video. You can do a group discussion, watch the video with a group of people, and then do the discussion questions that are on the discussion guide. You will have access to the Soul Injury Self-Awareness Inventory tool on our Master Peace online learning site. There will be a link for that. You will also receive a copy of the Soul Injury Self-Awareness Inventory that you can use for yourself or others. There will also be a coupon code in there for $10 off any Master Peace course on our online learning, and that code will be good until February 28th. So our online learning system, which we call Master Peace, is a great resource for individuals who want to do some self-directed learning. We currently have 12 courses and 17 tools available for purchase, and we also have a monthly subscription for people who want to do one course or tool at a time in a community setting. The monthly subscription is a great way for you to get the community experience and a personal experience. Now, the first lesson of every Master Peace course is free, and we hope that you'll log on and explore that site, and that link will be in your follow-up email. You also heard us mention the Soul Injury 4-day Virtual Leadership Institute we've been putting on for the past 9 years. And this is a way to really give individuals an experience of themselves as they learn the soul injury concepts, practice self-help tools, and participate in several ceremonies. At the completion of that 4-day training, participants are equipped with a jump drive, and that jump drive contains 16 plug-and-play mini in-services along with worksheets to help you facilitate a mini in-service in your community. It's a great way for you to be able to take the training back and do right away with your friends, family, colleagues, and your community. This is also a return on your investment for the 4 days that you spend with us. We are offering a significant discount for anyone who wants to join us at the April training being held April 28th through May 1st. The regular cost is $875. We are offering a discount to anyone attending today to come for $500, and that will be good until February 20th. You can register on the website or contact me directly for details. All that information will be in the follow-up email. We also mentioned several times today about Deborah's books. We are all very excited about the third book, Soul Injury, which will be released on March 1st. There's a QR code on your screen if you want to pre-order. Just know that all pre-orders will be autographed by Deborah and have a personal message. So if you want that in your book, you want to make sure that you get in on the pre-order, because after the pre-orders, she's not going to be signing and putting personal messages unless you happen to catch her on the road. So we also want to talk to you about elevating any event that you might be having with an inspiring speaker. With the release of the powerful new book, now's the perfect time to bring Deborah to your audience. Her insights, expertise, and wisdom will leave a lasting impact, whether it's as a keynote, a panelist, or a workshop. You see some of the topics up on your screen. We can customize the presentation for your audience, and you can have a chance to be amongst the first to have Deborah present using material from the new book. So don't miss this opportunity to engage, educate, and inspire your audience as we continue the Opus Peace mission to help people heal the relationship they have with themselves. I also want to take time to acknowledge that an event like this does not happen overnight. We have a great committee, our Anchor Your Heart committee. You see their pictures and their names up on your screen. They have spent the last 7 months meeting once a week to plan this event. All the social media postings, all the emails that you've gotten are all because of the work of this group. So I want to personally thank Karen Kinn, Mimi Lawson, Beverly Lafferty, Sheila Lozier, Marie Bainbridge, Mary Ellen Smith, Ginger Veal, and Louise Sutherland Hoyt. We also have gracious sponsors who sponsor our event. I do want to take time to acknowledge them. So first, our 4 Heart sponsor, Stowe Good. You heard their music today. So this is Karen Taylor Good and Stowe Daly. Together they are Stowe Good. They have been gracious enough to share their music with us and allow us to use their music in many of our presentations. You can check them out on YouTube. They have a YouTube channel, they have a website, and you can find more of their music there. Second, I want to thank our 3 Heart sponsor. So our 3 Heart sponsor is Suncrest Hospice in Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania, with their director, Karen Kinn. You may have heard her name a couple times today. She did receive the Mead Team Award for 2024. So thank you, Karen, and your team and company for being invested in the soul injury message and wanting to share it. Our 2 Heart sponsor is RFM in Switzerland, who is working on Matarox, a new reflexology therapy. So owner Sandra Ulrich has been a great supporter of Opus Peace and has been spreading the soul injury message in Switzerland, Germany, and Italy. You can also find her. You see her website on this screen, so you can certainly find her and additional information about her at her website. We also want to thank our 1 Heart sponsor, founder Pat McGuire, who also believes in the mission of Opus Peace and wanted to share and make sure that this event continues to go on year after year. We also have people who wanted to make a memorial donation to honor their loved ones or to honor someone in their life because they think their loved one or honoree would welcome the soul injury message into the world. You know, we often stuff our grief in our shadow, and one way to bring it out of the shadow is to memorialize them at an event such as this. So Marie Bainbridge, our Opus Peace Board President, and Mary Ellen Smith, our Treasurer of the Board of Directors, are here, and they are going to tell you about those contributors.
First, we want to acknowledge the donations that were made to honor some very special people. Marie Bainbridge, Sheila Lozier, Deborah Grassman, Patricia McGuire, and Bill Buddy Love Cassay. To all of you, someone has made a donation in your honor, and we are grateful to them and appreciate the opportunity to honor you today. Next, we would like to acknowledge donations that were made to honor the following loved ones: Cecil Stewart, Carl Pratt, Suzanne T., Charlotte Richmond, Henry and Mary Bainbridge, Baby Chesney Marie Bainbridge, Peg Connell, Shaku Desai, Jay Haven, Baby Gavin Lozier, Mary Lou Stufflet, Baby Zachariah Baker.
Continuing on with our donations made in loving memory of Joe Zeker, Marilyn Goodwin, Danielle Mugg, Pavalonche Procope, William J. and Donna M. Briley, Mary and Joseph Strolka,
Michael Subjack, Vietnam veteran. Elizabeth Riley, Gran. Zeus Veal. Tony Baloney. Alex Yuba.
Phoebe Veal, John D. and Maggie L. Veal, Gertie and Harold Snyder, Joe and Billy Subject, Catherine Ferguson.
So let's just take a moment to anchor our hearts for the families of all of these memorial honorees. Breathing deeply. Let yourself feel whatever you're feeling. Becoming aware of the brave place inside you that is strong enough to hold your pain without fear. Take one more deep breath and open your eyes if you close them. Again, thank you for being with us today. I hope that we have given you not only tools to take back and use with yourself, but to also use with others. Our hope is that we gave you an experience of yourself. Use the Anchor Your Heart tool over the days and weeks ahead and let us know how you're using it and the results. Just this week, I received an email from someone who participated in this event last year, and she said that she has experienced decades of death, dying, grief, mourning, and misery. As part of her morning routine, she lights a candle, gets cozy in her rocking chair, and as she rocks, she anchors her heart. She said that this provides her a sacred moment each morning and allows her to start the day in a meaningful way. So again, email us your stories. You can use my email, Angie@opuspeace.org, or info@opuspeace.org. We thank you so much for being with us today, and we hope that you have a peaceful afternoon. We'll be in touch within the next week with a follow-up email.